maybe 7, 8, 9 people still signing in, but I want to ensure that during our first hour and a half together that we have adequate time for questions from folks. So with that, let me introduce myself. My name is Steve Jan. I am the chief of the Underground Injection Control Branch at EPA Region 5 in Chicago. And I'm very happy to see everyone here tonight. I have a couple of my colleagues with me, including Leonard Miller, who is a geologist working in my group at EPA. We've got 2 parts to the evening tonight. The first part, I suppose there's 3. Anna is going to get us started with about a 10-minute slide presentation about the permit application that EPA has received for a type of injection well that we call a Class 2 injection well. And then the balance of our time up until 7:30, I'll be walking around the room and handing the microphone to folks who want to ask questions of Anna or myself or any of the other EPA staff who are here. You likely met Zach, who is up at the table outside this room. He also works in our group. So then at 7:30, we will transition to a formal part of the evening, which is the public hearing. During that time, EPA will be, we'd like to hear your comments on the draft permit, and those comments will be recorded by a court reporter. So one important distinction between our first time and our second time this evening is that this first hour and a half is kind of the conversation part of the evening, where we want to have hear your questions and do our very best to answer them. And then during the hearing, we're going to kind of go silent and simply listen to the comments that are made. Now, one thing I will do here in this first session is try to have an ear for statements people are making that sound a little bit more like comments than questions. And if I hear something like that, I'll just let you know and encourage you to share that again during the public hearing part of the evening. So with that, let me turn it over to Anna, and we'll get started.
Hi, can you hear me? No?
Working on it.
Okay, how about now? Better. Good? Okay. I think Steve gave most of my introduction. I just wanted to underscore something he said about the second part of the evening, which is that the comments while we are listening will be recorded by a stenographer, court reporter, and then entered into the final record, the record of comments that we'll then consider and respond to. So I will just kick right off, and I'm going to explain the program in general, overall, the Underground Injection Control Program. Then I'm going to talk about the specific well that you're all here for tonight. The Underground Injection Control Program is part of the Safe Drinking Water Act. And under the Safe Drinking Water Act, EPA is concerned with protecting underground sources of drinking water from contamination by injection. Under the authority that Congress gave to EPA in the Safe Drinking Water Act, EPA can issue permits, and in every permit decision, EPA considers whether the well is going to be protective of human health and the environment and drinking water sources. EPA sets protective construction standards, we set operating limits, and we require monitoring and reporting. We also require protective closure measures for the well when it's no longer in use or needed. And during the life of the well, EPA analyzes reports and well data, we witness well tests, and we can inspect the well as well. Congress also gave EPA the legal authority to penalize companies that don't follow their permits. Here's a graphic of the process, and the part that's highlighted darker is where we are now. When EPA gets an application from a company, we review the application very carefully. We might ask the company for more information. We also have our own resources and sources that we look at in order, to inform our decision making. When we're satisfied that The permit standards have been met by the proposed well operation. EPA will issue a draft decision. At that point, EPA makes the draft decision, which is in this case is the draft permit, publicly available so people can give us comments about it. And we will have a public hearing if there's a significant amount of interest, as there is in this case today. And again, if there is a significant amount of interest, we'll have a hearing. And this is where, as Steve explained, you can come and give us comments or write in and give us comments in that way. After we get all the comments, which means from the first comment period and tonight and up until the close of this comment period, we will collect all those comments and we'll consider them and determine whether any changes need to be made or any other decisions need to be made. And after we consider all the comments, EPA will make a final decision. And at that point, if anyone who commented feels that they want to appeal the final decision, you can appeal to the Environmental Appeals Board. I want to talk generally about the type of well we're talking about this evening. You might be familiar with drinking water wells, or in this area, oil production wells or gas production wells. These are wells that commonly pull things out of the ground. Injection well is putting something into the ground. Injection wells related to oil and gas operations, we call those Class 2 wells. That's what they're called in the Safe Drinking Water Act. And a subset of a Class 2 well is something we call Class 2R, and that is a type of well that's used for enhanced oil recovery, not disposal. That's a type of well in which the operator wants to inject something into the ground in order to, at a deeper level, push oil or gas toward another well where it can be extracted. The draft permit today for the Landfar 1-12 well is Class 2R in this category. A couple of facts about the Class 2R proposed well, Landfar 1-12. This well already exists. It's a production well. It was drilled in 1978. In March of 2015, Energex applied for a permit to convert the existing Landfar 1-12 well from oil production into injection for enhanced recovery. If permitted, Energex will be able to inject gas in order to increase oil and gas production in other wells in the area. It's just a very simple map from our public meeting notice about the location. It's about halfway between Leonard Road and Lowood Drive and about, I'd say, half a mile west of the county line. It's about 9.5 miles from here as the crow flies. When EPA receives the application, we check it very carefully. We're looking for where the underground source of drinking water is. We're looking at the geologic setting. We're looking at the well construction, especially since it's already an existing well. And we look at other wells in the area. And we also look at the plugging plan submitted by the company, which is their plan to plug the well when they're through using it. There we go. I've used a very specific term. You might have noticed underground source of drinking water. There's a lot of terms that people use for groundwater, for water that comes out of the ground in wells that's used for drinking. We use a term that's in the Safe Drinking Water Act. It's the underground source of drinking water. It's actually a very conservative definition of drinking water. It takes into account water that's currently used for drinking, but it also takes into account water that might be used for drinking in the future. And I'm just going to throw out a few numbers, and that is what we consider to be potable water, and by we, I mean people in general. Potable water has about 3,000 parts per million of dissolved solids, and the Safe Drinking Water Act actually protects underground water that is up to 10,000 parts per million of total dissolved solids, which would not even be drinkable by today's standards. But we recognize that it might be useful in the future for drinking water, so we protect that. Here's a very simplified graphic, not to scale, of the geology underlying this well. And we know the geology of this well location because it's an existing well, and we have information that was gathered at the time it was drilled in 1978. We have well logs and other tests that were done down that hole. The underground source of the drinking water underlying the well is 362 feet deep at its bottom, because we're interested in where the deepest drinking water is. That's made up of glacial sediments, and that's the zone shown in blue at the top that the Safe Drinking Water Act protects. The injection zone is called the Gulf Dolomite, and that's 3,988 feet deep. It's about 200 feet thick. Above the injection zone is an area that we've designated the confining zone, and that's rock formations in the Salina group. We call it a confining zone because it's made up of a different type of rock than the injection zone. The injection zone is a type of rock that will allow fluids or gas to go into it. The confining zone, it's got a different composition and structure, and so it's tighter. It doesn't have pathways, so it acts as a barrier to the zone below it and the fluids that are in that zone. The confining zone, the top of the confining zone starts at 3,782 feet, and it's 226 feet thick. Here we go. For some further information, as I was just telling you about the rock types, we determined that these underground rock formations are suitable for injection at this site. And that's to say that the characteristics and the location of the injection zone and the confining zone relative to the underground source of drinking water ensure that that drinking water will be protected. The injection zone is 3,600 feet below the bottom of the lowest underground source of drinking water, and the confining zone is 3,400 feet below the bottom of the underground source of drinking water. And it's not shown on this graphic, but there's other zones in between the confining zone and the underground source of drinking water that actually also form barriers. In addition to what's below, we look at what's on the surface and also what goes below that area on the surface. We review other deep wells in a quarter-mile radius around the proposed well, because if there's a well that goes down deep into the injection well, into the injection zone, we want to make sure that this well also meets our construction standards so that any fluid that goes into the injection zone won't come up this other well and impact any underground sources of drinking water. We checked 2 other wells within the area of review, that quarter-mile area, to make sure that they were properly constructed. Other things we look for relative to a proposed project like this is we look at threatened and endangered species in the area, because we have to comply with other federal acts as well. So we look at threatened and endangered species, we look at historical properties, and then we also look at water supply wells in an area around the well. We look at the location of those drinking water wells and also their depths. Here's a simplified drawing of what a production well looks like. It's similar to the Landfire 1-12 as it exists now. Typically, wells are made of steel pipes called casings, and the casings of different lengths are nested inside one another. The outside, the shortest casing is often called the surface casing, and the inside casing, which is the deepest, longest casing, is called the long string casing. These casings are made out of steel. In between the casings, you'll have cement between the casing and the rock at some level. Here's, again, a simplified, not to scale diagram of what the Landfire 1-12 looks like now for production. And I've included also for reference where the underground source of drinking water and confining zone and injection zone are on the left-hand side. This well currently has 3 well casings made of steel pipe, and they're cemented on the outside into the rock. The surface casing goes down 567 feet deep. There's an intermediate casing, and the long string casing goes to 4,339 feet. And at the bottom, there's cement at the bottom, closing off the bottom of the well, and there's perforations shown by those white marks where fluid would get in and out of the well. There we go. The first thing we do is we check the depths and the cement to make sure that it meets our standards for what would be a safe injection well. The surface casing outside, which is the shorter one, the striped one, we like to see that it's at least 50 feet deeper than the underground source of drinking water. In this case, it's over 200 feet deeper. We like for that outermost casing to have cement on its outside up to the surface, and this one does. The long string casing, we like to see that there's cement around the outside that rises up above the injection zone, at least 250 feet. In this case, we have 600 feet of cement over the top of the injection zone. And appropriate steel casing and cementing is one of the ways that we make sure that the underground source of drinking water is protected. A couple things have to happen to this well before it could become an injection well. The proposed conversion from oil production to injection for recovery is going to involve a few things. First, down the center, there's going to be a smaller diameter pipe that's called injection tubing, that's shown in white. And that's how the gas gets delivered directly into the injection zone. Near the bottom of the well, you see that pink stripe thing is sort of a donut shape. That's called a packer. It's made out of steel, and it does 2 things. It has a hole in it, so it holds that injection tubing in place. And it also seals off the space on the bottom. And that space, which I've shown here in blue, we call that the annulus space. That's sealed on the top, on the bottom by the packer, and it's sealed on the top. And it's going to be filled with fresh water and corrosion inhibitor, which acts as a barrier to leaks. And this internal construction isolates the injected gas from the underground source of drinking water and will deliver gas straight into the injection zone. And keeping track of the annulus fluid, which is the fluid that blue space shows, keeping track of that helps us detect leaks in the tubing, make sure it's not leaking. The permit itself has specific requirements in it that are tailored specifically for this well. First of all, the draft permit allows only the injection of gas for enhanced oil recovery, not for disposal. EPA also calculated maximum injection pressure in the draft permit. And we base that on the type of gas that's going in, its composition, the depth, the rock type it's going into. And this is a pressure above which the operator can't inject. And this pressure is calculated so that it won't cause fractures in the injection zone. Permit also requires monitoring and reporting, and if the operator feels like there's something going on in the well that's not right, it requires that he notifies us, the company notifies us. The permit includes also closure plans for the well. These closure plans have to be protective so that the well can go on in perpetuity and not release any fluids out of the injection zone into the underground source of drinking water. And finally, EPA requires that the operators set aside money, or financial assurance as we call it, so that even if the owner should go bankrupt, the funds still exist in order to properly close the well. The permit also requires regular mechanical integrity testing. It requires something called a standard annulus pressure test, because we require the well to have internal mechanical integrity, and that means that that annulus area that I was showing you, pictured here again, has to be functioning properly in order for the well to inject. The well cannot inject if it's not functioning properly. We require actually that the operator perform one of these tests before injection begins, after any modifications or any loss of mechanical integrity. We require this test at any time we request it. They'll have to do it, and we have a regular scheduled test every 5 years. We also require monitoring and reporting regularly. We require that the operator monitors injection pressure, flow rate, volume, and annulus pressure weekly and has to report it to us monthly. And these measurements are helpful as early checks for leaks in the well. We also require quarterly that the operator has to measure the annulus fluid. That way we can tell if any fluid's being lost, and that's a check for like a long-term slow leak. That's our way to figure that out. And the company also has to send a chemical analysis every year of the gas that they're injecting. Oops. There we go. Okay, so the summary of what I've said is that EPA protects the underground source of drinking water by regulating injection, and that's also how we protect human health and the environment, by making sure that underground sources of drinking water won't be contaminated by injection. We review proposed injection wells carefully. We reviewed the application of the Landfar 1-12 well, and we found that it does meet EPA standards. And so therefore, we issued a draft permit. That's our draft decision. And the permit requires protective standards, which include well-specific construction standards, the casing, the cementing, the tubing I showed you inside, well-specific operating conditions, testing, monitoring, reporting, plugging and abandonment plans, and financial assurance for future well closure. That's the end of my presentation. So now we can enter into our question and answer session. Steve will go around, like he said, and see if people have any questions, and we can give you answers and some discussion.
Thanks, Anna. So what I'm going to do is thank you for raising your hand. Ask folks to raise hands because they want to speak and ask a question. And I'm going to do my very best to kind of spread myself around the room. So we've got about an hour for questions. And Anna, you're going to come down here? That's great. There's another microphone right here. And as I said at the outset, I'm going to try to have it here for comments. You're certainly free to make those, but those comments will not be recorded if you make them before our hearing begins. So if I hear some comments, I'll try to alert you to the opportunity to make them again during the hearing. So with that, I have my first question here.
How do we know that the confining zone or the rock area that the gas is injected under, how do you know that it will not crack? What's the probability that there are already cracks and you have not discovered them, or how do you discover them? Because you know, maybe there are no cracks right around the well, but what about within 50 feet or whatever? There may be cracks in the strata, and that will cause leaks.
Hello, can you hear me?
It's on.
I'll take that one. What I did mention, but what was shown in one of the slides, is that there's presently 1,300 injection wells already in the state of Michigan. We have a lot of geological information about the state. So we know that this confining zone in particular is a very good, tight confining zone. And in all the locations that we've seen it, and in all the research that's been done on our behalf by Western Michigan University, this is not a fractured zone. You know, and furthermore, in looking at the company's records and other information from the DNR, we don't see fractures in this rock. And the other way that, the other way that we feel confident that fractures aren't going to be a factor here is that by keeping the injection pressure below the fracture level, below the rock fracture level in the injection zone, if it's not going to fracture the injection zone, then it's not going to cause fractures in the overlying confining zone.
Yes, hello. I think I'll tone it down a little. Okay, I watched the presentation, and it just seemed so comforting. I didn't notice anything at the end where there were any risks involved. Like maybe a slide or something about what might happen if the project goes bad. So that was, to me, a little bit, you know, it just seemed to me like we're not given all the facts. But I do have a couple of other questions. Okay, yeah, go ahead with that. Why did you choose to leave out any risks that may potentially happen from your slide presentation?
Well, we don't believe that there really are any risks from injection because it's a known quantity in the state. We haven't had drinking water impaired as a result of injection. And furthermore, there's a lot of checks and balances. So if the well leaks internally, we're going to know that's happening. And if it continues to happen, you know, we can either penalize the company or we can shut the well in and we can revoke the permit. If that had to happen, that's going to be happening well before any contamination has likely, you know, got out of the well into the drinking water. And like I said, we haven't seen that happen in this state. We haven't had underground sources of drinking water impacted by fluid coming up out of the injection zone.
Just to add for this question here, and the research that you didn't show to us, what did you learn from Pennsylvania? All the cases they have of leaked wells?
Pardon me?
In Pennsylvania, they have a lot of leaks there, they have a lot of problems. You just go to the internet, you're going to see. Have you learned anything from them?
Are you asking, have you learned anything from their status?
Well, you know, a couple things I'm going to say. First of all, you know, I'm working out of the Chicago office. I don't really have a working knowledge of all of those wells in Pennsylvania. But what I can tell you is that our standards are tailored and work for the wells in Michigan. And the Michigan geology is very different from Pennsylvania geology. So what we're talking, you know, it's very site-specific. So we geared what we're doing for the Michigan geology. That's all I can say about that.
And my other question is essentially from the slide presentation, it seems as though the integrity of the well is checked quite frequently, but is the water quality is tested every 5 years? Was that my understanding?
No, what we test every 5 years is the, what we have a scheduled test for every 5 years is the internal mechanical integrity of those workings that I showed you inside the well. The injection tubing and the area around it to make sure that there's no leak. There's not a requirement to test drinking water quality. And drinking water quality is tested in different ways, but not as part of this program.
And my last question, I apologize for hogging the mic, but you had mentioned something about Congress has given the EPA the right to issue a fine for Class 2 injection wells. So maybe my question would be better phrased to the EPA gentleman next to me. How often has that happened, in your opinion?
I just want to clarify, I also work for EPA.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
So the question was the frequency of fines, and fines are one method of enforcement that we have available to us. And you know, I just got our data for this fiscal year that just ended in September, and we levied $210,000 worth of penalties for injection operations in the state of Michigan in fiscal year 2017.
So there are problems.
Well, those, you know, I'm not, as I stand here now, I don't recall the details of those particular violations, but I'll tell you one of the most common sort of violations that we encounter is a failure to report to us. And we can issue a penalty for that. So it's important for us, for EPA, for our system to work to get the reports, and we do review them when we get them. And when people fail to report, we can penalize them, and we do penalize them. So
I have a number of questions, but I'll hit the highlights first. Do we have an idea of what the static pressure was in the field before, when it was first tapped with the original well?
No, because EPA does not regulate
So
gas production.
There's no record of the well pressure in the field?
There may be, but it's not part of our decision-making process.
And well, I'm going to that because the point is that obviously the pressure that was there was capable of confining the oil and gas that they were interested in extracting. I think it would be important to know that you've set a level of pressure at 1,850 psig for them, but that may be well above pressure that would be needed to push anything out of that and beyond. That's my point and my question is I think you should know what the pressure was in that field. Another point is, will the site be manned 24/7 when they are doing injection operations?
The second question I can answer quickly. The permit has no requirement for that kind of thing. That's up to the company. The second, so I can't answer that question. That'd be a question for the company. Your first question, I'm not exactly sure what the question was, but I can tell you that we calculate the maximum injection pressure based on the situation that's in the well now, the depth and the type of rock. the maximum injection pressure is a permanent limit. The permittee or the operator for this proposed well may or may not inject that high, may inject lower. As far as, I think you were talking about what we call reservoir pressure, which is the pressure in the injection zone. If there's a concern that it's getting too much pressure, I think that might have been your question. You know, the fail-safe on that is if that injection zone gets too full, the operator won't be able to inject anything because it just wouldn't go in, and so therefore they wouldn't be able to inject any longer. They can't inject at or below that pressure, then they can't inject unless something has changed.
So what will they have to do? Do they have to do something to unplug that so that they can continue? Are they going to put more chemicals into it?
I can't say what they would choose to do in that situation. They could treat the well. They're allowed to do that, but you know, if they wanted to really change the well or use a higher pressure, they would have to come back to us.
I'm going to go here and then up over here.
Okay, first off, Anna, Steve, thank you for coming tonight. Appreciate you being here with us. My question is in regards to the age of the well. It's nearly 40 years old. We showed a cryptic diagram of the well, talking about the cement structure as well as the steel casings. So what kind of inspections and reviews have been made of the current conditions of this well?
Well, you know, you can't exactly inspect it because it's cemented into the rock, but they have there's a test they can do called cement bond log, which is sort of it's a self-reporting process? No, it's a test that they do. It's not required by us, but we have the information for this well. And it's, they put an instrument down the hole and then they bring it up slowly. And it gives you a kind of a reading of the cement that's around the casings. And so we have that information. So we can verify that there's cement where I showed you where we think it is.
What is the life expectancy of this kind of a structure?
You know, that's a good question. I don't exactly know what the life expectancy is, but we have several wells operating from the 30s and the 40s that continue to have mechanical integrity both inside and out, and are active producers and active injectors right now.
So you'll find out when it fails.
That's how we know.
That's your stop measure. We'll find out when it fails.
You know, we're very concerned with the internal integrity, and that's
Doesn't
where
sound like it.
the tests are going to be focused to show that if there's a leak. If there is a failure, the tests that I showed you, like the annulus fluid loss test, that's going to show us that there's some kind of failure happening, and that's how we're able to tell.
Were the other wells abandoned like ours was for as many years as ours have been abandoned and not taken care of and not serviced? Are the wells that you speak of have been serviced and been taken care of as ours has not?
I'm only here speaking about injection wells. You know, the state is in charge of producers or other types of wells that are abandoned. Also, when I talk about plugged and abandoned, I'm using abandoned in a very specific way, what I mean is that it's kind of what they call abandoned complete. It's been filled and plugged. We've seen the records, we've checked the records, and we've given it our okay. That's what I mean when I say abandoned.
No, I heard you say that you were using... Can I interrupt just for a second, though, to observe that we have more than 100 people here, and I've got a microphone, and folks have been waiting patiently to ask their questions. I'm very hopeful to get back around to you in a moment, but others have been patiently waiting for it. And one benefit of the microphone is that everyone can hear the question with the microphone compared to those who are making comments or asking questions without the microphone.
I have a question. All those people in this audience, how many people live on a dirt road? Raise your hand. I'd like to know if they're aware of the fact that in Lakeville, there's a pump that's being used to pump out groundwater over 3,000 feet down that is being used to put chloride on the road, supposedly chloride on the road. I want to know how many of your cars are rusting out, how hard it is to get this stuff off. It doesn't smell like calcium chloride. Calcium chloride is used to absorb moisture from the air to make the road wet so the dust doesn't blow all over the place. I know what calcium chloride smells like. The stuff that they put on the road is now calcium chloride. And if you have a cement casing, that's great. But if you have a hole, some other location, sucking the stuff out of the water, out of the ground rather, to be put onto the roads, what good is the cement casing surrounding this well that's being used? And, you know, I just like to know if anybody's aware of the fact that the 17,000 volt pump pumping groundwater out of the area around Lakeville to be used in tanker trucks spread all over the roads so that we don't have dust. How does that impact the environment? That's my question.
How deep was that water?
3,000 feet plus.
3,000 depth as the well.
It's the same depth as the well. We're right back to where we are.
If that's your question to me, again, we're here talking about this particular injection well. EPA does not have the authority to oversee brine wells that are pumped in order to get that brine and spread it.
The Great Lakes strategy that was closed because of the contamination from the water that was used to be putting on the roads. Has anybody ever tested to see what they're spraying on the road? Anybody have any idea what they're doing to our environment? We're all sitting here like a bunch of learners. We have no control over our own environment. We all have wells. Raise your hand if you have a well. Oh, there you go. How does it feel? With this toxic stuff.
We go to this gentleman here.
I was curious in asking, Ian, what can we do as members of this community who are here and we care a lot about our homes and our safety? What can we do to get you to deny this permit? What can we say? What can we do?
Let me take a shot at that one. That's an excellent question, of course. And I will say that obtaining comments is very important. And expressing your views, sharing information that you have that perhaps we do not have and was not part of our review to this point in time. And at bottom, our job is, well, of course, to ensure that the actions we take protect drinking water. That is our mission, and the principal ways in which we carry out that mission are to apply the law and the facts of the situation. So we will sometimes receive comments that speak to what the law provides and how that may or may not be consistent with what we have proposed. And we sometimes receive comments that give us information that perhaps we did not have that is relevant to applying Safe Drinking Water Act standards to a proposed injection well. So that's my way of answering that question. Let me provide a follow-up. And then, then I want to, I'll go right here next.
Thank you. So my follow-up question then would be that the only way is if we can provide you information that you don't already have about how this could endanger our drinking water. Is that correct?
That would be important information to share if you have it. Other types of important information would go to whether the draft permit is in accordance with the law and the rules written under that law.
Can you tell us in plain English what he asked?
What's the action?
So we can understand the smoke you just blew up our butts.
In other words, there's nothing we can do about it.
That is true. So, I will say that we do receive applications for which we ask for additional information before we reach this stage, a tentative decision stage. And applicants, when they are unable to give us the information that we need to protect drinking water, we will not move forward to propose a permit, much less issue one. And we have also received comments in the past that have caused us to modify our path, if you will. So comments are important and they do matter, and they are carefully considered before a decision.
How many is denied?
Here, excuse me.
Hello. I'd like to know what Energex's record is with issues, violation, including resident complaints, both the U.S. and internationally, and how the EPA has taken that into consideration.
We have, Energex currently has one well permitted with us, and that well has been in compliance since it was permitted. Other than that, what we mainly look for is this well going to meet our standards and our requirements in this area? And can we apply conditions to it that are going to keep it operating safely and are going to keep us in the know about how it's operating? And those are the things we consider in this kind of decision.
What about international? You said one with the EPA, but it's not a United States company, it's a Canadian company. Do they have wells elsewhere, and are you aware of issues with those wells?
We don't consider the origin of the company or other wells that they have, especially other types of wells. So we don't have any knowledge, and it's not part of our decision-making process.
I think the gentleman in the middle. Oh, okay. It might be turned off.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? When you say that the existing construction shown in your slide was analyzed, is that done by EPA testing, or is that documents provided by Energex?
It's documents provided by Energex and documents on file with Michigan DNR.
Sorry, I didn't do your question here. Since H2S is hazardous, why is this injection well not categorized as a Class 1, which has made much stricter regulations, including a 2-mile area of review?
The Safe Drinking Water Act provides that any injection for disposal or injection for enhanced recovery like this, what has to be going into the well has to be a product of the oil and gas process, production process, and the gas that's being used. You can also use water for injection for enhanced recovery, but other than water, any fluids that come from oil and gas production are classified under the Safe Drinking Water Act as okay for Class 2 disposal, and that's why.
Okay, I asked because restriction, that's called the Halbert loophole. Just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Right here, and then.
To the gentleman's question regarding the calcium chloride on the road, when it's put on my area, it smells like rotten eggs. I'm wondering if it's H2S contaminated already. The young lady here, the Energex area of operation is basically the Commonwealth in St. Clair County. And my questions are related basically regarding Energex. When I Google this company, Energex Petroleum Limited, I get a street view of a residence in Windsor that's identified as a gas station. My question to you is, what is the experience that Energex has in injection well operation?
All I can tell you is, as I said before, this is their second application to us. The first application was approved, I think, in 2012, and it's been in compliance.
No prior history is actually considered then, is that what you're saying?
We are considering what's before us in the application for these wells.
The monitoring process of the process. There's 100% say of monitoring process. What percentage is actually undertaken by the applicant, Energex?
When you mean the monitoring process, you mean the monitoring and reporting?
Absolutely, yes. Monitoring and reporting, it seems like it's basically a preponderance upon the applicant, i.e. Energex, Is that true?
Yeah, the operator does the monitoring and then the reporting to us, and Steve can answer that question.
Let me share two additional points. So the law we're talking about tonight is the Safe Drinking Water Act. It is one of 12 really big federal environmental laws, I think. And what the gentleman is speaking to is the notion of self-monitoring and reporting. It's true that UIC permits include many self-monitoring and reporting provisions. And that is true across all the other federal environmental laws. So I'll add two things that are important, at least to us. One is when a person sends a report into us, they are given very specific language in which they have to certify that the information is true, accurate, and complete under penalty of perjury. And a person who falsifies a report is subject to criminal prosecution and potential imprisonment. And then the other thing that's important for kind of the whole system of monitoring is EPA itself performs its own inspections of injection well operations. And so, for example, in the fiscal year we just finished, we inspected ourselves more than 100 wells in the state of Michigan. And that's not just a visual look, but it's also an interview with the staff operating the well, and it's also a more detailed check of all the records that are in our possession than we do kind of in our more kind of screening level of review.
Thank you, Steve. I guess there is some degree of accountability. There are 5 wells in that area which potentially are operated, actually are operated by Energex. Do you know the number of, out of the 5, the wells that have geophysical logs?
All I can speak to that is this well, because it's the only injection well. The other ones you might be talking about might be production wells.
Okay, to clarify, on the Department of Environmental Quality Geo webface site, they do highlight the 5 wells controlled by Energex. 3 have had geophysical logs there to the north of Leonard. From what I understand, the proposed site south of Leonard has not had a geophysical log. And that goes back to ascertaining or quantifying the integrity of the piping. There are certain types of tests that are available, such as resident imaging. I'm wondering, your cross-section was informative as far as the context of what the topographical nature is, geophysical properties. What verifiable data has been used and what processes have been used to ascertain that that is in fact the cross-section of geophysical data?
Well, for this well, there are some well logs. There's a cement bond log, which I was talking about before. That looks at the cement that's around the casing. We also have a geophysical log that is like a gamma ray log that shows it's a way of detecting the geology that's outside the casing. So we've looked at that as well. And you know, within that area of review that I showed, there's 2 other deep wells that go into the injection zone, and we also looked at the construction of those wells as well. If you're talking about wells that are farther away, like Leonard, which is over 2 miles away, we didn't look at that as part of this.
I'm specifically referring to the 5 wells controlled by Energex. 3 have been geophysically logged. The one in question to the south that's going to be used for the injection has not, along with the other one on the south side. This is according to data publicly available Department of Environmental Quality Geo webface.
It's possible we have data that they don't have, but what I'm telling you is that what I looked at for related to this well and related to the other deep wells, you know, I haven't looked at all the Energex wells if they're not within the area of the influences of this well.
Hello. And I'm sure this was covered before, I'm not sure I heard the whole comment. What is the protocol in the event that there is contamination to our wells, our drinking wells, waters that we bathe with, cook with, shower with. What is the chance of something like that happening? And I believe you earlier in the evening you said that it wouldn't happen because the wells are pretty much locked up, lock, stock, and barrel with the cement and the piping. And if in fact it did happen, it is, of course, the people who own the wells or are doing the injections to notify you. Is that correct?
Steve, do you want to talk about, she's talking about what happens in the case of contamination wells.
Sorry, again, was asking a question when you got there. So the permit, the draft permit prohibits contamination, even beyond that, it prohibits fluids from entering underground sources of drinking water. So should that happen, it would be a permit violation and subject to penalties. And separately, there's another section of the Safe Drinking Water Act, section 1431, that gives EPA authority to direct parties to clean up existing contamination.
How long after they, which they're self-governing themselves at this point, find out there's a leak, okay? How do you know they're gonna call the EPA within an hour and notify you? My understanding is you're taking that this is Honest Joe and they don't care about the money it's gonna cost them and how much time they're gonna lose, because these are people running a business and they're in business to make money. How can you, my understanding is you can't guarantee me that they're gonna be honest and care about the people and the environment around. Everyone, it's all about the money. Am I correct in assuming that?
So the draft permit includes a number of provisions that I think are relevant to the question comment. If there is a known or suspected loss of integrity, and maybe I should turn to Hannah to help me on this, but the permit then requires the cessation of injection.
But what happens to us as residents?
And going back to some of Hannah's earlier remarks, the monitoring provisions in the permit are, in our view, intended to provide early detection of leaks. Should there even be any leak from the well, there is separation distance that Hannah spoke of.
Yeah, when I was talking about mechanical integrity, I'm talking about that area inside the well. So if you have some kind of breach in that tube that goes down inside, we might be able to detect that tube is leaking, and then we would ask them to shut in and fix it. But that type of leak doesn't translate necessarily into there's contamination in the underground source of drinking water. There's a lot of separations that go into that, and that's kind of an early detection.
Would you concede that our water can be, would you concede that the water can be contaminated in other ways during this process?
In other ways, do you mean like
surface? They've got to haul chemicals in, right? Anything can happen. I mean, are you aware of the report that the EPA did, made final last December?
I'm sorry.
Are you aware of the EPA's report, final report on the hydraulic fracturing activities can impact the drinking resources under some circumstances? Are you aware of what those circumstances are?
Yeah, I'm aware of that report. What we're talking about here is a different kind of well that's much deeper than an underground source of drinking water.
There's like 6 different ways on them drilling that specific well where we can get contaminated. We can get our water withdrawals, hydraulic fracturing times when our water pressure is low, spills during the handling of hydraulic fracturing fluids and chemicals or produced water that result in large volumes of high concentration of chemicals reaching groundwater resources, injections of hydraulic fracturing fluids into wells with inadequate mechanical integrity, can spill over on our bumpy dirt roads when they're hauling it in. Dispose of storage of hydraulic fracturing wastewater. These are all concerns. We don't live on like a nicely paved road by any means. Yeah, you can tell me that well is just perfectly fine, but my biggest concern is, are you aware of this report?
Yeah, we are aware.
Yeah, EPA, of course, wrote that report and issued it at the request of Congress. And let me clarify that that report is about the practice of oil and gas production, known as hydraulic fracturing. And Energex has not proposed to hydraulically fracture this well.
Yeah, hydraulic fracturing is a production technique, and that's not what we're talking about. It's a separate type of well here. But as far as things that you're talking about, like surface spills, that is not part of our permit decision process, but there are other laws, state and federal laws, that govern surface water spills or surface spills onto the ground that, you know, govern and give relief to those kind of events.
Okay, so you're telling me you're making sure the well's going to be safe, but all the stuff we need in order for them to do their job, you don't care how it gets there, we don't know how it gets there, that's not our job to govern that. That's part of the whole process.
No, I'm saying that there are federal and state laws that cover those parts of the process. The permit that we're talking about tonight covers like at the wellhead and down below. The state probably, the state governs some of those things, and whether there's contamination from surface spills, those are governed also by federal and state laws. There are separate laws covering different parts of operation. That's definitely true.
So can we turn over to the gentleman here?
So if we're not doing hydraulic fracking, what are we doing over there?
They're injecting gas down hole into a strata in order to push the oil and gas reserves that are left in there out towards another well.
What kind of gas?
It's a gas mixture that comes from production wells elsewhere in the Addison 12 field.
Because it says right here, hydraulic fracturing was exempt from the Underground Injection Controls of Safe Drinking Water Act. And if we're 2 miles away, we got another well for the chloride or whatever it is that's being sprayed on the roads. That's only 2 miles away. It's probably in the same vein, so you're going to pump something down one well just to have it come up another well.
Well, actually, they're injecting in this well, the battery's on. They're injecting into this well in order to force fluid to another well. They're not, as far as I know, involved in that brine disposal well. That's a different well that's farther away.
It's the same depth.
But it's farther away. It's not going to inject the fluid that far away.
Michigan's a geosynth line. I don't know if the people understand what that is, like a big onion. And as you get closer to the center of the state, it's deeper. And as you move out, it gets by Canada, and the Blue Water Bridge there, that upper wash, and that strata that's way down below comes out at the surface. So this big onion skin that we have, rock strata, it can travel long distances. So I don't know what 2 miles is going to do with all this chemical. 2 miles is nothing, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, so that sounds like a comment.
That's
so
a
this
comment.
gentleman here wants to ask a question.
All right, I wanted to know what effect these chemicals, the gases, have on fauna and flora, if you know of any effects that they have.
I don't personally know the effects that they have. All I can tell you is they're being injected very deeply, and they're not going to be in contact with flora or fauna as a result of this injection.
Okay, in Lubbock, Texas, there were several people that died in 1975 from an air H2S. It was, it's very deadly. And I live right on the corner of Leonard and Seaport. I'm not far from the well. I'd like to know how the H2S is delivered. And I'd like to know what prevents, I mean, what killed these people down in Texas was a very small valve. By the time the team got out there, they found him dead in their truck and another guy dead out in the yard. So all this groundwater is one thing. How does the H2S get delivered? And how was it injected to the well? And how was the annulus water checked? Those are my questions.
The annulus water is checked, you know, in the well construction, there's a valve that goes into that annulus area, and it's checked. It's checked by that. When they want, so they'll put a pressure gauge on that and check that. Also, to check whether it's full or not, they do that by filling it up and seeing how much water it takes. You know, if it's a small amount, then they really haven't lost anything. Your other question was about H2S gas, and I understand that that's a concern.
Yeah, and how is it delivered to the site?
How is it delivered to, well, I mean, you know, like I said, this well already exists, and there are already existing underground lines.
How deep are those lines?
What?
How deep are those lines?
I don't know how deep they are. They're not, again, it doesn't fall to EPA to have to.
Okay, well it's a legitimate question because those lines could be corrupted as well.
Well, yeah, but it's up to the company and whatever laws govern those lines.
Well, yeah, that was my point about Texas. By the time there's an accident, it's just paperwork. There's no resolve at that point.
Let me go over here. Yeah, over here. Just to further that point, so am I correct in assuming that the underground flow lines that will bring the high pressure gas to the injection well are underground somewhere? You don't know the depth. You're not regulating them, and that has nothing to do with this permit.
Yeah, that's correct.
Does that seem deficient?
And you keep on saying if something goes into the groundwater, it could come from above, which would be these 10-foot, 100-foot deep pipes that are not monitored. What are we putting in? Is the stuff we're putting in the well gas or liquid?
It's gas.
You know, it's gas, but when you put it under pressure, it's at least going to be partly liquefied. At the pressure, you know, at least we calculate it as partly liquefied at that pressure. So, you know, they're not monitored by EPA. We don't have authority under the Safe Drinking Water Act to monitor or, you know, govern those lines.
So technically, the line could be split in half. They issue a permit. Since you don't look at it, you really could say the permit's good because you only look at the well.
Can you say that?
I mean, if you're not looking at the line could be mangled up, have leaks, but you're not checking it and you're not concerned about it because that's not part of the permit process and not part of the EPA's responsibility.
Yeah, we're not monitoring those lines, and I don't want to speculate on but, you know.
Was anyone, during the permit process and the inspection of the well, was anybody from EPA at the well, or is all the information coming from Energex?
I think this goes to a remark I shared earlier, which is that, of course, like the federal environmental laws, this law includes a heavy self-monitoring, self-reporting concept, but that is supplemented by EPA's own inspections, and we do inspect injection wells in the state of Michigan.
I'm talking in regards to permitting. But before you allow the permit, do you inspect the well, or does someone from EPA go on site, look at the wells, do something? Or is everything for the permit process coming from Energex?
We haven't inspected the well yet because it's not under our authority to inspect it. Also, what we are going to really focus on when we do inspect the well is going to be the apparatus that's going to go in as part of the injection permitting. Right now, there's just, you know, the well is just there. It's an old production well, or it's a production well that's not in use right now. There's really nothing, I mean, we wouldn't be able to tell what's below the surface just by looking at the surface of the well. So we need to rely on tests and well logs that were done when it was drilled and after it was drilled. And so we do have the information from Energex, and as Steve said, there's a heavy burden on the applicant to make sure that's accurate, because if it's not, there's repercussions. And in addition, we also look at information that's been submitted to the state, and we have other information about the geology area that we have ourselves that we look at.
Okay, just one last question, sorry. I believe they're running the permit now for an injection well, and I don't believe it's running now that the permit is active. There was one from 2012.
That's a different well.
It's in the same field. Are they, I don't think it's running right now, but while it's not running at the moment, are they still sending you data?
Yes, they do.
And they're still complying with the permit?
Yeah, they have to report whether they're injecting or not. And they have to monitor whether they're injecting or not.
Okay, we have a question here in the back.
Is there any current violations on record or lack of reporting for this well?
For this well, I don't know. It's been operating as a production well, so we don't monitor those production wells. It's not permitted yet.
So this well is not now regulated by EPA, so Energex has no obligations to EPA for this well at this time.
What is the duration of the permit they're applying for?
The permit is issued for the useful life of the well, so it's permitted as long as it's in operation and has no other issues.
So that means that our potential grandkids could be impacted by that.
I didn't hear that.
So that means that potential our grandkids could be impacted by those operations.
It means potentially this could be operating then.
Who is going to be monitoring the air pollution while they're injecting the chemicals into that well? We have a lot of residents in the neighborhood. We have nearby, probably a mile away, elementary school. There's going to be probably a great amount of trucks going by. Who's going to ensure safety of those residents and kids that those chemicals will not spill while they're being transported to that location?
Well, I don't know if you heard, but the injected gas that's going into this well is coming under underground fluid lines. Which are and the company does not anticipate truck traffic to this well. In addition, you know, I can't say what air permits. Again, working just on the injection permit. Steve, do you want to speak to that at all?
Right. The only thing I can add is what has been said earlier is that Safe Drinking Water Act is one of many laws that may apply to a business that produces oil or gas, transports oil or gas or wastewater from oil or gas production. And so our richest base of knowledge, and myself, is the Safe Drinking Water Act. And so I'm hopeful that we can wrap up at 7:30 so that we have the full hour and a half available for folks to make comments for the record from 7:30 to 9. So with that, I've got a question here and I have a question there, and I'll try to get a couple more in before we attempt to wrap up. Another thing to mention is after the hearing is over, we will stay until we get kicked out. I'm not sure what time time that will be, but until, if people have questions after the hearing is over, we will stay as long as we can.
So I understand that you're bringing all these chemicals in overground on trucks. You're using some, not that deep of pipes to get whatever the chemicals are for the injection. Do you know how close this is to Leonard Elementary School and how vulnerable children are to an accident? Think about that.
Yeah, it's like about, the well site is like about 2.25 miles from the well site.
No, it's not. Half a mile. No, it's more than that. I live at the corner of Leonard and Seaport. I'm 1.5 miles from town. It's basically across the street.
Okay, I looked at, all I can tell you is that I looked at all public water supply wells, which would be your elementary schools, and private drinking water supply wells, all the records that were available to me, which means the private well records are self-reported to the state. Public water supply records are part of the state record. And all of
and how close this is where the children play and go to school every day. You're very, very close to this elementary school.
chemicals are going overground. This is not part of our permit, but there is, you know,
That's what I'm saying.
Why won't you deny it? What are the items you need to do to get it denied?
Regulations mostly enacted by the state in cases you're talking about that are the checks and balances on the above ground systems and transportation. It's not part of our permit process.
Let me pass it right down to Leonard.
Regulates that.
Are you aware of how many times we have called emergency services because of the leaking gas from the first time they injected?
No, I'm not. I'm not. I mean, you can tell me about it.
Okay, my question is, H2S is poisonous for the human body at 3,000 parts per million. This well's been tested before at 17,900 parts per million. It's a big difference from 300. What can we do to get this reclassified since it's such a dangerous well and so toxic from class 2 to class 1?
Well,
which will, you know, better.
So a relevant comment could be that EPA has improperly classified this well. And it should be classified in this other.
What are you going to do to consider having this upgraded to a class 1 which has more regulations?
You need to contact Hannah.
Thank you.
It would be good to make that as a comment if that's your comment.
So let me take one, maybe two more people, and then I do want to start generally on time for the hearing because I anticipate that a lot of folks are going to want to share their views. So right here. Okay, and then one more person after this, and maybe I'll go to, just because I see him, the gentleman over here.
So I have two questions. The first one is two-part. Does the EPA inspect all injection wells at least once every 5 years?
No.
In the slide, I believe it says the inspection schedule is once every 5 years at least.
That was the schedule for a standard annual pressure test at wells, and we witness those wells, or usually we witness them ourselves, or we have a contractor witness them. Sometimes we accept the information from the company, and if they're going to send us the information, you know, they can't just send us pass-fail. They have to send us certified under signature the instrumentation readings that we will interpret.
This is the mechanical integrity testing you're talking about?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
And you're not, somebody else is doing it and giving you the information?
Sometimes, and sometimes EPA has a contractor out there witnessing it, and sometimes we have the state witness them for us.
And we have 1,400 operating in the state right now, on record. Could we find out, as you told me the other day when I spoke with you, that there were 1,400. I cannot find records of when, in 5 years, all of those have been tested.
Okay, so this lady here has a follow-up and has the microphone. And then I think I'm going to end our Q&A time and move to the hearing at that point. And as I said, we'll be around as long as we're allowed to be around after the hearing. So
my follow-up is the 312 Lampard well, which is, I think, just outside the quarter-mile area review from the well that you're talking about permitting. Has EPA ever inspected that well, that injection well?
If that's one of our permitted injection wells, I don't know that off the top of my head.
you know, but we have records of all the wells we've inspected.
Yeah.
We would have to check.
We would have to check.
My second question, there's a lot of questions that we've all had that don't appear to be in your permitting process. Is there another permit that needs to be required by the DEQ or somewhere else that we can address these concerns to?
I don't believe that the DEQ requires a permit for this well. The DNR requires a permit for this well.
So meaning the state.
The state.
It's a question of which agency.
The state. I mean the DEQ.
I think Anna misspoke.
It's switched back and forth. Yeah, it's the DEQ.
Okay.
So they do require a permit for this well, not an injection permit, that's the federal permit, but they require a separate.
Because of the conversion, or they don't have to do one because this well's already permitted as a producing well?
They would probably require a permit as a producing well, but the state of Michigan doesn't have the authority for injection wells. We have that. But so this well, in addition to our permit, should we issue a permit, also has a state permit.
So this gentleman twisted my arm over here, so I'm going to allow one final question.
Mrs. Ann, is it true you already make up your mind to give this permit? You agree about it and you're going to issue this permit?
This is a draft permit, so it's not issued yet, that well's not operating. We're still in our decision-making process, and the comments that we get tonight, and especially if people provide additional information, maybe about things that are in the area, other wells in the area, things on the surface. Those are comments that we're going to consider as we move forward with the decision. It is true that all the information that's been submitted and that we looked at separately show that the well as constructed and with the operating requirements that we would impose on it, those would meet our requirements and standards. So that part's true, but we have not issued.
Yeah, the short answer is no. So let me, is Zach in the room here or not? So I'd like to transition to our hearing part of the evening. And we do have a court reporter here who will record all the comments and spoken. I don't know if anybody knows. Can you go get Zach? So I'm going to read a few words. And then Zach has our running list of folks who have asked to comment. If when you came in the building you were unsure or you thought you would not comment and you changed your mind, please see Zach and I'll try to highlight him for you when he comes into the room. And then we will attempt to call folks in the order in which they asked to speak. So this is the period of time when EPA will listen, but we will not be responding to comments at this time. And before I go further, at risk of saying things twice, let me just get my prepared statement out here for you. Say things twice. So once again, welcome everyone to the hearing tonight. As I said at the outset, my name is Steve Jan. I'm the chief of the Underground Injection Control Branch at EPA's Region 5 office in Chicago. And I will serve as our so-called presiding officer for the hearing tonight. And you've met Anna already. Many of you met Zach Stevenson as you entered the arena here. Anna is a geologist and Zach is a hydrologist. So this is a hearing about EPA's proposal to issue a permit to Energex for a Class 2 injection well. Energex plans to use this well for injection of gas to enhance oil recovery. The proposed permit has been available for viewing on EPA's website and at the Addison Township Library. The full administrative record, which is like the full collection of documents that EPA reviewed to this point in time, is available in our office in Chicago. So we're pleased to have this opportunity to listen to your comments tonight. The comment period is open until midnight on October 19th. So there is still time to share comments if you're not prepared to do so tonight. And here comes Zach. And I'll turn to you in just a second, Zach. So if anyone would like to make a comment, either spoken or in writing, they can do so by the 19th. And they can be, written comments can be sent to Anna by email or regular U.S. Postal Service mail. So we're holding this hearing in accordance with the regulations under the Safe Drinking Water Act. The hearing is designed to allow you to make your comments for EPA to consider in making a final decision on this permit application. All the comments we receive during the hearing tonight and during the full comment period, as well as the comments we received during the original comment period, will be part of the official record for this draft permit. We will not be responding to your comments during the hearing. However, we will carefully read all the comments after this current comment period ends. And then we will prepare a document that we call a responsiveness summary that will respond to all of the significant comments on the draft permit. The time that we will take to prepare that responsiveness summary will depend on the volume and the nature of the comments that we receive. Once that summary is complete, it will be sent to all those who commented or otherwise participated in this hearing. When EPA reviews the comments and prepares that responsiveness summary, we will make a decision to either issue or not issue a permit. At the same time that the responsiveness summary is sent out, we will send a letter to Energex letting them know whether or not we have issued the permit. If EPA issues a permit, the permit will authorize Energex to convert an oil production well into a Class 2 injection well and to operate that well. So we announced the first comment period on the draft permit back on April 14th, and we sent a copy of that draft permit to the Addison Township Library on the same day. We're all here tonight because we did receive comments back at that time indicating significant public interest in the draft permit. We announced our hearing in the Oxford Leader newspaper on September 6th. We also posted the announcement on our webpage. On the same day, EPA mailed and email announcements to interested parties, local government officials, and state and federal agencies. So a public hearing gives people an opportunity to formally and publicly make EPA aware of their views on the draft permit. All oral statements will be recorded word for word, but you are not sworn in and we will not be asking any questions of you. So this is the opportunity to tell EPA whether the permit is consistent with the Safe Drinking Water Act and the underground injection control regulations, and whether the facts, as EPA has determined them, are accurate. Our role is to listen to each comment that is made. And then we will, when we prepare that responsiveness summary, it will be added to our so-called administrative record for the permitting decision. The final decision, when EPA issues it, may be issued to a body known as the Environmental Appeals Board by any person who submits comments on the draft permit during either of the two comment periods or participates in this hearing tonight. If you want to make a statement, please make sure that you give your information to Zach so that we can correctly enter your name into the hearing record. And even if you do not want to make a statement, but you want to get information from us going forward, also please share your information with Zach. So Now, we want to be sure that everybody who wants to say something has time to do that. So Zach, how many folks have asked to speak so far? 39. Okay, 39 people. And based on that, we have a somewhat tight timetable of 2 minutes and 20 seconds. To those who observe that that's a short period of time, let me emphasize that the comment period remains open for another week after tonight.
Thank you, another paper.
I made, So written comments can come to us at any length. So while we might ask folks, we will ask folks to be brief in their oral remarks tonight, the written comments can be as long as you like. So if you choose to send written comments to EPA, please make sure that they're sent by email or postmarked by midnight on October 19th. Okay, so among those who have asked to comment, is anyone an elected official? Okay, so since speaking on behalf of the township, okay, then. Okay, very good. So I would invite elected officials or their representatives who want to make a comment to come to us first. The key reason being that they speak on behalf of all of the people they represent. So with that, let me turn to the first speaker. And I am going to be our timekeeper, so please bear with me. And does each of the other gentlemen wish to speak? Okay, so this gentleman here I've asked to be kind of in the queue to be the second speaker. Okay, so with that, please step on up.
If you need another elected official, do you guys need more time on the mic? I'm on the line.
You ready? Yes, just turn around, turn the cameras there. Do I look all right? Yeah. Should we start? Lawyer.
Never be too afraid to get close to a microphone. Right in your mouth. Sure.
So this is my time, not yours. So I ask each speaker to state their name and spell their last name, if they would, for our public report.
My name is Robert Davis, D-A-V-I-S, Township Attorney for Addison. The draft permit states that the injected fluid is limited by the permit to gas. The title of that section is injection fluid. The township requests that this provision identify and limit the injection gas to natural gas only. We ask the permit be specific in this regard to preclude alternative recovery methods in the future, including enhanced oil recovery using methods beyond the injection of natural gas. This would include a prohibition against other types of fluids for sweeping. Specifically, the permit should exclude the introduction of chemicals under all circumstances. The township is aware of the economic realities and the history of low returns on initial recovery methods, and we're concerned that those pressures will lead the applicant to want water alternating gas injection, polymer flooding, flow diversion using polymer gels, or the injections of surfactants. We object to everything, and we would object to this public hearing because your public hearing notice made it clear that this was for gas injection. If this applicant intends to do anything beyond gas injection, we object to the hearing process for a procedural defect. It specifically says gas injection. If you're going to allow this applicant to inject chemicals or other methods, you need another public hearing, and the public hearing is defective. The area of review was set at a quarter mile. That's a discretionary decision. There's another provision under section 146.06 that allows you to expand that analysis, and we ask that that be done. I'll go to my third major point because I know I'm running up against time. Energex purchased the assets long ago from Onco Petroleum. The former leadership of Onco faced 3 counts of submitting false prospectus of the company and 2 counts of federal perjury. Second, the township has no city water and no city sewer. Any incident will be significant. The assets have been misrepresented, there have been federal crimes, and there have been counts of perjury regarding the assets that are now in the hands of Energex. So we request a bond be set at $5 million, and that the bond on behalf of this company be triggered in favor of contaminated wells, contaminated groundwater, contaminated soils, and contaminated surface waters. The trigger of the bond needs to be tied to the cleanup criteria under Part 201 of the Michigan EPA Act. We're all set? Thank you.
Zach to keep track of time for us, so as you speak, if you could check with him every now and then.
Okay, my name is Bruce Pearson. I'm the Addison Township Supervisor. I've already had dealings with Energex. I've already testified up in Lansing. I don't think they're the most honorable company. They didn't have any safety measures in effect until it was brought to their attention of the state DEQ and DNR hearings. We have had a spill which they did not disclose to us since that time. It had to be brought to our attention by the fire chief. I'm just trying to let you know that Energex, you say you haven't had any violations, but then you say you haven't had any history with them either. I'd hate to be the history. As you know, all the experts up in Flint, they all had something to say because they were experts, but now we have a crisis up there. I hope that you are also doing your due diligence as they failed to do in Flint. And as a retired deputy, about the best I can do for those people up in Flint is probably get them an extra bologna sandwich in jail. But what I'm saying is that I hope you understand, you don't live here, we do, but I hope you understand that we don't want to have to tell you we told you so. So I hope that you do your due diligence on this. Thank you.
My name is Michael McDonald. I'm the MC DONALD. I'm the village president in the village of Leonard. I've lived in Addison Township 39 years. I was there when the gas plant was going in on Rochester Road. I was there when Grace Petroleum was built. I was there when the field we're talking about was drilled and welled. We've had nothing but trouble with hydrogen sulfide and well drilling and well production in our community. I submit that the draft permit is flawed as no pressure testing has been performed on the production wells harvesting the oil and gas in the injection area. And these wells are a vector for water contamination. There's been no physical testing of those production wells for pressure and sealing integrity and in that same injection area. Hydrogen sulfide is and has been a serious problem that previous well producers were required to address. This is a serious threat to drinking water by the introduction of gases into a hydrogen sulfide bearing strata, and gases are able to more easily permeate and travel through solids and broken strata, as well as through man-made appliances like wells and transmission pipelines. Most of these man-made perforations in the strata are 30+ years old in a highly corrosive environment. There should be no permit issued until either adequate testing on the other wells is performed or adequate measures to address those issues are in place and required by the EPA to protect our water. Thank you.
Ken Freeman
to offer the comments, and followed by Wendy Plashak. Going once, going twice. Julie. I invite Ken Freeman and Wendy Plashak to share their comments. And the third person would be Julie Seville, excuse me. I'm going to apologize now broadly for mispronouncing many names. Okay, so let me move on.
They're coming.
Okay, I'm sorry.
My name is Wendy Pleshak, P-L-E-S-H-A-K. This is very heartbreaking to me, that even the proposition of starting the injection well up. This is your job, and I understand you have a job to do, but this is our lives. I've only been there almost 20 years. We built our dream home. When I built this house, and I built it from scratch, I said to my husband, I want to live here for the rest of my life. I want my grandchildren to come visit me in this house. There's so many uncertainties that you don't appear to have answers to, which is very troubling. And I can't come to terms with the fact that all you do is give a permit for a well. And you don't have any concerns over what gets where, what happens when, that they're self-governing themselves. It is up to them whether or not they want to report an incident, when they're going to fix it, and how they're going to fix it. Once something goes wrong, let's face it, we're all in a lot of trouble. You can't go back and fix it. You can't tell some young girl because this toxic chemical got into the air that, oh, I'm sorry, but you're no longer allowed to have children 10 years from now because your reproductive organs have been damaged, or you've got a certain cancer. We didn't know it wasn't underneath our jurisdiction. We just give permits based on the quality of the wells. I beg you to think about the big picture and not just your job and what your box is. Because once that well is finalized permit, anything goes. You know it, they know it, I know it. Thank you.
Then the person in the queue will be Tom Johnson, please.
I am Julie Seville, S-A-V-I-L-L-E. And I have to say I was very frustrated. It feels like I see your timeline in your slide presentation, but I'm learning about this. This isn't part of my life, so I'm learning about it as we come here, and it really felt like it was a done deal already. Your considerations seem narrow as it pertains just to the Clean Water Act and the parameters. It seems like there's a lot of catches there. And I must say, I feel way better hearing our leadership talk about their research and their stance on it and everything that they've looked into and what they presented today. And I support that 110%. So that's my comment.
Next in the queue will be Chase. Yes.
Hi, my name's Tom Johnson, J-O-H-N-S-O-N. I'm one of the residents that live right on top of the oil well. I've had to deal with interjects a number of times. It's a big concern that you're not taking into consideration these above ground lines that are highly corrosive, and this gas that they're pumping in, not just gas, but all these different toxic chemicals, that you're not looking at this as a more serious well, like more like a class 1. I want you to really take a look at that. Also, I heard you make a comment that you look at DNR reports. Our process is not to report to the DNRs to the DEQ. We've had to make several phone calls because of the fact that we smell sour gas. It's H2S. Interjex has multiple times told us this is a closed well system, which is not just the well that you're talking about, the for 112. There's 5 wells altogether. They're all connected, and there's potential that there could be something wrong with there big time, because it's happened since 2013. We've had to call the DEQ and make reports, and their only thing is to say, you gotta go, leave the house, and run. That's it. So this is a very serious matter. I really hope you do your due diligence and take a look at it. Very easily contaminate our water and poison us through the air. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next in the queue is Bill Carroll.
My name is Chase Willech, WHITLATCH. Just moved here 2 years ago, and this concerns me a lot. I've got 2 kids under the age of 2, and knowing that this could be around possibly for a while scares the crap out of me. I really want to know, you say you guys go for the drinking water, but then you said the pipe that's coming, bringing the pressurized gas to the well, you're not going to worry about. But if that does leak, that is going to get into our drinking water. So I really hope you guys will kind of look into that. It may not be part of your standards, but I hope you make it part of your standards. Especially with what they were talking about, the chloride. If that's going down 3,000 feet, that's only a couple hundred feet from where we're injecting. It may be a mile or so away, but it appears you guys were not aware of it. I hope you're going to look into it. If it is getting into that, and it's getting brought up and sprayed onto our ground, there again, it will seep into our groundwater. This due diligence of them governing themselves, they already have a bad record with our city and the townships. You guys only inspected 100 out of 1,400 last year. It's like 7%. With them knowing that they have a 7% chance of actually getting inspected, do you really think that they're going to take profit over telling you the truth? I just kind of want to leave it at that.
Next in the queue is Kurt Sotka.
My name is Bill Carroll, Carroll. I go over a little bit of time. I'm going to use some of my wife Katie Carroll's time. She's also set to speak, so I'll speak on her behalf. The EPA's role is to help ensure that natural gas extraction does not come at the expense of the public's health and the environment. The agency's focus and obligations under the law are to provide oversight, guidance, and where appropriate, rulemaking that achieve the best possible protections for the air, water, and land where Americans live, work, and play. We have documented cases where this operation has already had leaks. In less than 2 years, there have been 2 leaks at this field that we are aware of. Both were reported by nearby residents after smelling H2S, and only located once we contacted Energex to inspect the site. During this time, residents have reported H2S odor to the Pollution Emergency Alerting System 12 times. Upon contacting Energex, several times we were told they did not smell anything, even when the fire department was also on site and agreed that they could smell odors. We've had to evacuate our homes. Energex should not be permitted to introduce even more risk into the operations by adding a second well that will inject highly concentrated quantities of this lethal gas into our environment. We cannot smell and report odors if and when similar issues occur underground and leaks occur that reach our aquifers. How long will the leak continue to go on before anyone even realizes it? Energex has not met their liability for maintenance, monitoring of the wells. In the past year and 9 months, routine maintenance and monitoring has not occurred. And this is critical. I've confirmed the DEQ that they have to do this. The paths to the wells are overgrown. The mailbox at the facility has been hanging open and is stuffed to capacity with mail. It is important to note that there is currently active pressure in these wells. One of the H2S leaks detected by the residents during this time was only fixed because the resident contacted Energix directly. What if we had not been home? What would we return home to find our pets and our neighbors' horses dead? You're talking about issuing a permit to inject hazardous gas into the ground near homes and water wells to a company that knows the field contains lethal gas, knows that the seal went bad in 2015, which is common due to H2S's corrosive properties, knows that H2S entered the environment, knows they are responsible for maintaining and monitoring the equipment and the field even when production isn't running, and yet still hasn't chosen to let these operations go unattended. Has still chosen to let these operations go unattended and unchecked. We have photos showing just how neglected these wells are. No one's been out there all summer. And there's, like I said, there's pressure in these wells. The same company is the one you're trusting to submit accurate information on the permit application. The permit application had 8 errors when this should have been the easiest section for them to fill out. The landowner's names and addresses within the area of review. 8 errors. How many other errors are in this application? Ones that could impact our health and our safety. This lack of concern for detail and accuracy is concerning when the EPA is trusting this information to make an informed decision on the permitting of a well that will contain poisonous gas. Energix, a Canadian company, is not concerned with our health and safety. Energix claims that these operations are safe and that it is a closed-loop system and we aren't at risk. Well, we disagree. We've already experienced these failures in their closed-loop system. They may make light of these leaks and disagree. The leaks, because the H2S levels released during those failures weren't at a They may make light of these leaks because the H2S levels released during those failures weren't at a fatal level yet. We believe it's only a matter of time until a failure occurs where they are fatal. We are relying on the EPA for the safety of our health and protection of our environment. One more thing that we'd like the EPA to consider is that Energix has shown severe lack of concern following the rules that could keep us safe. Here's a sign locating at their existing wells in the Addison 12 field. Emergency, call this number. That's the emergency system. Just about done. We believe that we provided the EPA with enough reasonable doubt evidence of risk to health and environment quality to deny the permit for the proposed conversion of Landfire 112 to a Class 2 H2 injection well. We believe the draft permit is flawed because the EPA is trusting data from this company. Thank you. Good night.
Next, I'd like to invite Tim Gasparsky to approach.
Kurt Sucker, PSOTAA. I'd like to see this permit rejected. The EPA doesn't know who's responsible for the flow lines throughout the entire field of operation. They don't know where to go to assure that these lines are tested and safe. And if the EPA, as proponents of a safe environment, can't find anybody that is responsible for these lines, that they would take on this action themselves and include this within the same permit and make sure that everything is safe before going further. Additionally, with respect to Energix, I have no faith in their honesty and their effort for accuracy. As a landowner that's directly to the west, within the quarter mile, they have my address listed as Sterling Heights. I've not been in this address since 2005. Oh my gosh. If they were on site and only could look up from the well, they would see a house on the property, a mailbox at the street with an address listed on there. I could easily been notified about all this stuff well in advance of having a neighbor come by door to door to see if I got any information. Thank you.
Next, Colin Campbell, please.
Timothy Gasparski, Gasparski. I come to this process with over 40 years in the domestic auto industry, engaged in statistical process control, systems analysis, quality assurance, and best practice methodologies. I can assure you that basically from a precursory analysis here, what I see regarding structural integrity, potential for water contamination, the quality of the injected H2S sour gas and its risk to water quality, mechanical integrity, track record of released H2S odors, and unresponsiveness of Energex would lead me to believe, after a good 20 years of risk and reward analysis, there is no upside to the residents in this process. And believe me, I think it would be criminal to go ahead with this process any further and issue this company, which is highly suspect, acquisition and further type activities in regard to this process. The gas is corrosive, it's poisonous. We are surrounded by some of the largest sand and gravel deposits in the world. These are permeable materials. The lines that would transport the H2S are not monitored. In fact, their locations are even suspect. They could be open to contaminating a unique aquifer that we do have in this area. There are artesian aquifers that come from various depths, are resultant on hydrologic equilibrium. They're where they are due to certain maintained pressures. If these pressures are compromised, ecosystems that are attendant to them could be compromised along with our water, which typically in our area are in the depths of between 60 to 80 feet and are of varying quality at this time. We have no access to municipal water supplies. There is no plan B. I vote no, and I would hopefully have the EPA see things my way also. Thank you.
Michael Bray, to be our second speaker.
Wow, I didn't know I had so many intelligent people living around me, I swear. They know their stuff. I've been here 23 years. I just wanted to say I'm, total opposition to this because I can throw a rock and hit this oil well.
Say your name and spell your name.
Michael Prey, P-R-E-Y. And what I wanted to say is I'm in total opposition to this well, and mainly because, I had a well that was closer to my house, and in 1999, I put a family room on my house, and I had to have that well relocated, so I put a new well in. But up until that time, from the time I moved in 94 to 99, I never really had any problems with my filter system. I had a, sediment filter, then I had a carbon filter on my, water softener system, because we got really hard water where I had, so, there's a lot of iron and stuff. But after 99, I just started noticing more and more, and I know the mineral deposit, or the well wasn't being, operated at that time. They shut it down. The thing was always squeaking over there, and that's how I noticed it was off, because it was always squeaking at night. You could hear it, going on and on, making noise. In the summer, quiet summer nights, you hear it squeaking all the time. I don't know if they oiled the thing enough or not, but the last time they drilled, I started looking at my filter system that I was taking out of my, reverse osmosis. I have a reverse osmosis too, but that's under my kitchen cabinet. But the filters, when they were drilling, about a month or two after they got done drilling this last time in 2012, it was vibrating my house, and I just noticed, my filters becoming more and more full of black sediment. It was just, it was smelling more, and I saved some of them. I have them still. But it was just a lot of black stuff coming up in the water. I don't know if that was because the ground around me was vibrating, but there was a lot of vibration going on. And they were drilling at night. They had lights everywhere. I didn't know if they were supposed to be drilling at night, but they were. And they had a big drilling rig out there. And, I still get stuff in my water, but not as bad as it was there up right after that point right there. And I just wanted to make sure that was put on the record. Thank you.
Bill Warner and Colleen Campbell. If you care to speak, please come on over here. And then beyond that, it's Bill Warner and Joy Manthey.
Good evening. I'm Bill Warner, W-A-R-N-E-R. I'm a relatively new resident of the area, and I was quite disturbed when I heard about this proposal and this permit process. Still am. I think our concerns have been well voiced by everybody that's participated so far tonight. And I want to go on record, of course, opposing this permit. Basically, who takes the risk in this whole process? The local community. It's all on us. There's no risk to speak of for entities. Did I say that correctly? That $250,000 whatever fee is totally inadequate to cover the risk that we face as a community. Granted, the track record apparently has been okay for these kinds of wells, but for the other concerns that were addressed, this is only one small piece of the big picture. What we really need to do is have a forum with all the parties present, including the company and Michigan Department of Environmental Quality. Thank you.
I call Joy Manthey, and next would be Toby Rich.
I'm going to get mine out. Toby Rich. Don't write my comment.
And then after Ms. Manthey, we will invite Robert Davis.
Good evening. My name is Joy Manthey, M-A-N-T-H-E-Y. I have several concerns before I came to this meeting, and now I have many more concerns about this permitting process, and I'll just express several of them since I have little time. First off, we have to think about the mechanics of this well. It's a mechanical thing, those of us who understand how mechanics work, as things age, they degrade. They don't last forever. There's an unknown life to this well. This well, we found out tonight, was built in 1978. We have no way of knowing what the integrity of the concrete or the steel casings are at this point. Nor do we know if they really were built to withstand the kind of pressures that this company, Energex, would inject into the system. This company has no automated monitoring system or alarm system. They've already shown a lack of integrity when it comes to reporting. And so we are finding out after the fact when something goes wrong. We as a community need to be proactive. We need to prevent things from going wrong, not finding out after contamination has happened. We understand the location of this proposed injection well is right across the street from a body of water, Sacred Lake. It not only, affects, of course, our personal wells, which is very important to every individual, their family, and their children, but we're also talking about environmental issues. Should something happen where a leak would go into a watershed, it could affect waters and our wildlife for miles around this county and outside of the county as well. Furthermore, this well is operated by a foreign company that we don't know very well. They don't live here like we do. They don't have a good history with us at this point. And so I feel they show a complete lack of integrity. So I implore the EPA, please do not approve this permit. Thank you.
After Mr. Davis, I'd like to invite Michael McDonald. Thank you. And then after Mr. McDonald, Rodolfo Nitzmie, excuse me for mispronouncing.
Good evening, everybody.
State your name and spell your last name, please.
Yeah, my name is Rodolfo Nitray, spelling N-Y-I-T-R-A-Y. First of all, thank you for coming tonight. I appreciate the EPA representatives and most of our neighbors here. Some of the concerns that we have here is regarding the lessons learned that the EPA had in regarding of other wells that failed. We don't want to be a next fleet in Michigan. We want to make sure that we are safe here. When I talk about we're not really sure about the integrity of the well, and as my wife said, regarding 40 years, how do you know the integrity of this well? When you apply pressure inside of the well, it's like a cut. When you put the pipes down, you have a cut there in the skin. If you have a cut in your skin, what's going to happen? You can get infection. How do you know how deep is that cut? When you have pipes on the ground, you're going to have a gap. This is what I learned with Pennsylvania. Sorry, my spell, but in Pennsylvania, they learn a lot about that. Regarding insurance, we talk about the insurance that we have is for closing the well. Nothing related to all of us was impacted in our lives. There is nothing considered that. Regarding the class, that you have class 2R, I think that EPA, please review that, considering the locations and the situations of the wells to class 1. And in case of failure, what's the emergency plan? I'm a former EMT firefighter, and I didn't see in the moment list the risks and any emergency plan in case of failure. I think something that you need to consider. Regarding mechanical testing every 5 years, I think that you should review the Becker and annual failures, when that happens already, and how to catch and how often that happens, to have a right frequency of inspection before that happens. And I want to ask the EPA, will you please give us another chance, another hearing, that you can answer some of the questions that has not been answered here, such as pressure limit in the well, integrity of the well that we have, the lines that goes to the well. Understand the EPA is not going to inspect themselves or what the company is providing you as a report. Then why don't you use third party to do that? Okay? And give us what's the health impact and risks of this project. And please cancel, don't proceed with the project. Thank you.
William Lindsay and then Julie Shorman, I believe. Okay, William Lindsay and Julie Shorman, if I pronounce that correctly, and after that it would be Martin Frisbee.
My name is William Lindsay. I live on DeQuinder Road. You people all know what's going on, so I'm going to address my comments to these folks. You're talking about injecting a toxic substance under huge pressure into the ground we live on and where we get our drinking water from. You assume that because this well is deeper than our water source, that it's not going to travel upward. But if it is under pressure, it can travel anywhere. The truth is, you don't really know what's going to happen, or if there is a leak, where it might travel to. You're willing to take all the information from Energec at face value to issue the permit, but you don't actually check on anything until the permit is issued. This very dysfunctional system. You're not even concerned with Energet's past performance. You've listed over and over the regulations and safeguards that are supposed to be followed. But once again, that information is supplied by the company itself. If their permit is pulled, which seems to be the worst thing that can happen to them, or if they are fined, how does that help us if our water is contaminated? I keep hearing the word annulus. Does that sound familiar to any of you? Do you remember the BP Gulf oil spill? They were regulated, and they were following all the safeguards. In Pennsylvania, people who were told fracking was safe now turn on their faucets and fire comes out. Everything you talk about assumes there will be no leaks. But what are the safeguards if it does? There's none. You have made no accommodations for the people who will no longer have fresh water. Ask the people in Flint how they live on a day-to-day basis. What can you do without water? And as a final note to my neighbors, I think it would be advisable for all of us to get a professional water inspection if and when Energet is going to start injecting this stuff into the ground, to have a baseline for a class action lawsuit.
Okay, I gather that Julie Schoner does not wish to speak. She certainly is welcome to. Next is Martin Frisbee, followed by Laura Frisbee.
My name is Martin Frisbee. The last name is spelled Frisbie. One of my concerns is that some of the chemicals that will be used for extraction, when I've done a little bit of research, I've found that it is a cocktail of chemicals. And I'm not really sure what Energex may be using. I know that some people tonight had actually talked about the chemical component of our discussion, but we don't really know what they'll be using, and the fact that they're not even present here tonight really is a red flag to me that there's something going on. They don't want to be here. So that bothers me a bit as well. I also did some research on Class 2 wells, and I found out that once the gas and the oil have been extracted and that well is no longer useful to this company, they will use the site as a waste disposal site to put other chemicals down there that have been extracted from other sites that they've used. And who knows what those chemicals will be. So sometime in the future that might be an issue that we'll be dealing with. We may be at another meeting here talking about the fact that they're going to turn this Class 2 well into a waste disposal site, which I think should concern all of us. Now, I'm basically not wanting this to go forward, period. I love where I live. I'm a city boy, and I've only lived out here 2 years, and it is a magical area. When I drive down to Quinter and I see the large oak trees, it's every day. Every single day I'm just like in awe of the giant trees. And one day I'll be dead and buried, but I would hope that those trees are still around. Now when I hear stories such as this one today, you know, the folks from EPA telling us about you know, how safe and everything that is, I am skeptical. I would hope that this area can remain pristine. And every time, all of you individuals here, take a drink of water, or take a bath, or use water in any capacity where it's touching your body, you may have in the back of your mind that thought, is this drink safe today? Who wants to live with that thought? and just hoping and trusting these people, and Energex is not even present today. Who wants to deal with the fact that every time they have a drink of water or bathe, that maybe this is the day that my water's been contaminated?
Next in the queue will be Karen White with a hyphenated name that I can't quite read.
My name is Laura Frisbee, Frisbie. I would also like the record to reflect that in our question and answer session, there were a lot of hands that were still up after however long it was, an hour that we spent answering questions. My hand was up. I kept popping my hand up. I never got the microphone to ask any of my questions. I had like 5 questions I wanted to ask. Have not been addressed yet. And I saw, when I looked behind me, looking for where the mic was traveling to next, there were probably 15 or 20 other hands that kept popping up. People have questions, and you didn't have time to answer them. I understand we're in limited time here, but this is not adequate. If Energex was here, maybe a lot of our questions would have been answered. They should have been here. One thing I would like to mention too is back in the late 70s, it was a recession. Steel was not made with the integrity it was made previously. The cars back in the 50s and 60s were like tanks. Late 70s, we had a recession. Everything was cut corners on, including building houses, including production of steel in this area. They cut a lot of corners and they did not put the proper ingredients into the steel production. So this well, built 40 years ago, was built with steel in a recession that may not be up to the integrity of what steel should be. So that's the encasement of this particular well. And there's really no way, like you mentioned earlier, that you can look down in there and see the integrity, but you're hoping that this water bath will help let us know if contamination leaks. Well, who's going to let you know? Maybe Energex. They're not even going to be on site to let you know if there's been a leak for the last year. The only way we'll know if there's some contamination is, like last speaker said, if we get a baseline inspection of our water, and then we continually test our water if this permit goes through to see if anything is leaking into our water test. And we're not talking a free water test here. The water test that tests for heavy metals and additional radioactive material, they're not testing for that in the free water test. Those water tests can be very expensive. So for us to prove that anything's in the water, first of all, we have to keep getting tests done. Second of all, we're going to have to prove in a court of law that those elements weren't there before. Because Energex is an LLC, limited liability corporation. They're going to wash their hands of anything that we find in the water. They're not going to have money to go to court against us. They'll just file bankruptcy and they'll be out of here. So that's something to keep in mind too. Okay, so just to wrap it up, we have a lot of concerns that people didn't even get to ask. So I don't think this meeting was adequate. I wasn't informed of this meeting. I live between 1.5 miles from the site of the well. I didn't even know about it until someone told me. So I don't get the Oxford newspaper. People in Leonard may not get that newspaper. I know you filed a notice there, but there's a lot of neighbors that would like to be here, I'm sure, and don't even know about this meeting, and would like to also ask their questions.
You have the mic, and then after that it is Denise Woodruff. And then after Ms. Woodruff, it is Lynette Novak. Followed by Wes Green, it appears. followed by John Bertolini. Then after Mr. Bertolini, it will be Mitch Washer. Are any of the folks who I called coming to the microphone? Okay, thank you.
My name is John Bertolini, B-E-R-T-O-L-I-N-I. A couple of things. I guess the biggest thing is, how can anybody who lives in this state even allow anything like fracking to even take place? We have the biggest water source in the world. How stupid can people, all of us, be to allow something like this to happen? That on the ballot for 2018, November, by the way, it's a long ways away, there's may appear a referendum and a vote against fracking in the state. I can't believe it's taken this long. It doesn't make any sense. There's a couple of things here. In May of 2012, the state of Vermont became the first state to outlaw fracking. New York State, which is unlike Vermont, has banned also in December 2014. Maryland, I guess half a year later, it's also banning. So I'm petitioning and asking everybody to go out, talk to everybody, and get this on a referendum and a vote to eliminate this in this state. It makes absolutely no sense. And I still have to ask a couple of questions or make a comment about the fact that this supposed gas that because it becomes under pressure, becomes a liquid. And I want to know the definition of what fracking is, because they're pumping a liquid into the ground. Of course, there's water and who knows what else is in that liquid. But if that's the case, and if this becomes the beginning of fracking, or if for some reason this particular company finds the gas that they're putting in doesn't work, who's to know if they're going to put something else in to cause the oil or whatever reserves they have down there, what techniques they're going to use, under whose guidelines are we going to even know that they're doing this? And so, whatever chemical goes into that ground, that's one issue. And I'm still harping on the fact that we have a well that's over 3,000 feet. I know the electrician who wired it with 17,000 volts, the same power that comes off the power lines. He's the guy who put the pump in, and they're down over 3,000 feet. What good is the casing if it's impregnated with titanium? If a mile or two away, there's a well pumping that same water out and being used to put on the roads. That makes no sense to me. I just replaced 3 culverts in a subdivision, a private road. Back in the early 80s, they were put in. I removed the culverts and they came out like Swiss cheese. These are metal culverts in the ground. I'm out of time. But anyway, my question is what's going to happen after almost 40 years to the casings that supposedly are intact?
Mr. Washer, please, and then Dr. Rebecca Manery.
My name is Mitch Washer, W-A-S-H-E-R. I live about a half mile from the well we're talking about, southeast. I was not informed correctly early in the process. They were sending information to the wrong address. My neighbor to the south of me, 300 feet to the south of me, was never informed. He's not much further from the well than I am. I have no trust in Energex's ability, one, to inform us of issues. Two, there is no risk resolution. I'm a little disturbed that even the EPA doesn't know the risks of what's going on here. If you would have stated them. In the business I work in, we have a thing called failure mode and effects analysis. And we understand failure and what it causes. I didn't see it in the EPA display tonight. I haven't heard it tonight. I also fly private airplanes. We go through a checklist. And no kidding, you don't violate that checklist. That checklist has been around forever. You violate the checklist, you're at risk. We don't even know in this well situation what's connected to it. We don't monitor it. We don't check it. It's close to the surface. There's all kinds of risk here, guys. I'm not for this or any sense even close. I understand that you're working the well. Okay, that's a big piece of the picture, but it's not the whole picture. We have wildlife, we have cattle, we have horses, we have corn, and the groundwater affects all of that. And we have an elementary school real close by.
Don't forget the humans.
And don't forget the humans, right? So, there's a lot of risk here that I don't think the EPA from Chicago really understands. And I don't know why Energex is not here. If they really wanted this to work, and really wanted to work with the community that it's sitting in, they would be here listening to us. And they're not. That's all I have.
Thank you. Next in the queue is Paul Amaranti.
I'm Dr. Rebecca Mannery, M-A-N-E-R-Y. I live on DeQuinder Road in a residence that has been in my family for almost 50 years. I confess to being a little bewildered about this evening's program. I had expected to hear a presentation from Energex, a rigorous debate by EPA, and then interjection from us. Instead, I find that the EPA has done an admirable job of representing the interests of Energex Petroleum. I am unequivocally opposed to the issuance of this permit for the reasons that many of my much better informed neighbors have brought up. We have not even talked about property values and what might happen given the very vocal opposition to this plan. I also want to remind those of us who know this that there is a gas pipeline that is running right down 36 Mile across DeQuinder, just south of the well site. I am sure that I am rather recent to this area, but I'm sure that there were open hearings and assurances of risk, etc., when that went through. Yesterday, TransCanada, which is the pipeline operant, sent me a beautiful 4-color calendar. It also included an emergency number. I don't think that they talked about risk enough, and I don't think we're talking about risk enough here. I think that the EPA is a government agency, and the government's aim is to reflect the will of the people. I don't see that reflected. And I respectfully ask if the EPA will ignore the will of the people, that our elected officials will do whatever they can to keep this from happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Next in the queue is Diane Weckerly. after that will be Chip Mannery.
Hello, my name is Diane Weckerle. It's spelled W-E-C-K-E-R-L-E. I wanted to speak to one of the things that Mr. Frisbee raised earlier. I think it's a real important concern. He raised the issue of the fact that they may just be drilling this now, but these wells can be converted very easily into injection of all kinds of toxins. And in fact, in Michigan today, we have 1,800 injection wells in which they're injecting toxins from fracking and all kinds of things. And while Michigan has 1,800 injection wells for use by the oil and gas industry, there are only 100 injection wells in Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Minnesota combined. So it's, they've really opened the doors to making Michigan a big toxic waste dump with all these wells, like pin cushions. And inevitably they're putting all kinds of, they're putting us at risk. Putting our water at risk, they're putting our air at risk. We fought very hard in Southfield to prevent the drilling right in the middle of the neighborhood in a church property. We did everything. We had the hearings, we made all kinds of comments. The city did everything. They changed the whole zoning laws. They took it to the courts. They appealed it in the courts. And no matter what we did, it didn't matter. It went in behalf of the oil and gas industry. And it just seems to me that besides the immediate risks they're putting us to, we have to look at the overall risk to the environment. I mean, we have this global warming is just screaming in our face right now. We have hurricanes, we have, fires, we have all kinds of flooding. We need to pay attention to this, and I think we need to just stop all this gouging of the earth for gas and oil and coal and start looking to safe means of energy. I mean, we have the sun, we have the wind. Why not use some safe forms of energy and protect ourselves and protect the environment?
Next in the queue is Brad Albertson.
Good evening, I'm Chip Mannery, M-A-N-E-R-Y. I'll admit I came to this meeting fairly ignorant. I only found out about the hearing a few days ago. So I'm so glad I got a community that's so well informed and so many are so prepared. So what I try to do is show up today with an open mind. I know there's two sides to every argument, so I thought I'm gonna learn about this process, see what's involved, and educate myself with it. What I came back with was nothing but a myriad of questions. It seems as though we're concentrating on the permit for the well. It seems like a very, very small facet of a very large operation. Equivalent of asking your mechanic to check out the radio in your car and then just going ahead and buying the car because the radio works great. and then even certain things didn't make sense to me. We're only looking at a quarter mile around the well site. So I did a little math. That's only 660 feet radius around that well. Most of us live on land in this rural economy, in this community that's bigger than that. So that's like not even looking to your neighbor's property. It's so small. So then you say, okay, well, and then you went on to describe the operation. It's pushing gas through a well to the next well. Well, the next well's farther than a quarter mile away because we didn't look at that well. But the operation is farther than a quarter mile. We have to understand what the operation is. It's like driving blindly and only looking a quarter mile ahead, and there could be a brick wall a half a mile. So we definitely have to look at the scope. Just broaden that scope and see what their whole operation is all about. And then and maybe go beyond the EPA's jurisdiction, but I worked in business my whole life, and I work for businesses that aren't all that ethical sometimes. And Energetic seems like one of those businesses I used to work at. I sat in meetings where executives figure out how to, it's against the law, how do we get around it and not get caught, and what's the cost benefit? Okay, I get penalized, but I'm making millions over here, so I'll just pay the penalties and I'll keep doing what I'm doing. That's how it works, and nobody will tell you that because that's not politically correct. But we all know, read the news. Okay. And so think about that. Think of broadening the scope. We need to understand the whole process. I don't know anything about their operation. I wouldn't let a business walk in next door and only evaluate them based on the storefront. So we just need a larger research. Thank you.
Next in the queue is Steve Meinchin.
Okay, please feel free to
share your comments.
My name is Brad Albertson, A-L-B-E-R-T-S-O-N. There's a few points I would like to make. I'm sure all of you are aware President Trump is cutting the EPA budget. He proposes a 30% reduction. In that reduction, for the 2018 fiscal budget proposal, he will cut the agency's Office of Science and Technology nearly in half, including 40% funding for EPA employees who oppose and put in place environmental regulations. How can you approve permits when you don't even have the manpower to enforce them now? And I'm concerned about the EPA fact check. Does the EPA check all the facts that are provided by Energetic on the permit, or are they assumed correct? I live across the street from the well and next to the pump facility on Leonard Road. I was not given an official notice of a permit application. I am also entitled to royalties from the drilling, and I have denied them, but it was only offered to me years after Energetic bought Onco in 2011. There's been Onco has been tossed around today a few times. In 2011, they were bought by Energetic for $1.2 million, and Onco was valued at $30 million. Energetic was established by Onco President Peter Bilodeau and other shareholders. Onco ran into trouble when Secretary regulations for failure to file required financial reports. Bilodeau took the shareholders' money and left them high and dry. He also owns a payday loan firm. Very reputable company. I also hope that if there's an incident that the EPA would be able to find an international company based in Canada before they dissolve or are acquired by another company started up by Peter Bilodeau. This information was found by a quick Google search from the London Free Press article dated March 25, 2011. I live next door to this facility, like I said, and it has very little security and is rarely manned. During the winter, the drive is rarely plowed, and I can count on one hand how many times this site has been visited in the last year. We use hundreds of gallons of water per week for our livestock, which are valued at tens of thousands of dollars. If our water is contaminated, our property would be useless to us. There are no backup or contingency plans in effect and no access to any public water supplies. An EPA fine will not help me water my horses nor keep my property value. Homes in Flint cannot be bought or sold because of toxic water. We do not need to be the next Flint, Michigan. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to invite Mr. or Ms. Swent, followed by Deanne Bednar.
Good evening, my name is Steve Meinstrom, spelled M-E-I-N-S-C-H-E-I-N. I think I'm like most of the people out here, afraid of the unknown. I came here very much like one of the previous gentlemen, not knowing a lot about it. Really appreciate everybody else who has done their homework more than I have. But after hearing a lot of the questions, seeing the presentation, more worried than I was, a lot more worried than I was when I walked in. A lot of questions that just are unresolved. The last speaker, I think, kind of stole some of my thunder. I was going to mention that the EPA, now run by Scott Pruitt, is cutting your budget even more. How can we expect you to represent us rather than the big money interests? It seems to be an issue of energy and wealth versus public safety. I'd like you to make your decision based on public safety. So, I've lived here just about 4 or 5 years or so, south of the proposed, south of the proposed permit well. And we rely on well water just like the majority of people here, pretty much everybody here. I've got a wife, I've got 3 growing teenagers. I don't care that much about property value, I care about our health. And I'm more worried about that than I was previously, of course. Nobody knows what the long-term effects are of even low-level emissions. Nobody studied it, based on my, again, Google research over the last day. So I think it comes down to, again, energy and wealth versus public safety. I'd feel a lot better if Energex were here, hopefully defending some of their claims, and I'd even feel better if some of their management decided to live nearby the well and have their children go to school here.
I'll sell them half my land to build a house on.
That's all I have. Thanks.
On the list, it's Swent next.
So, first off, my name is Christina M. Swenda, S-W-E-N-D-A. First of all, I would like to thank every one of the neighbors who are here, all of those who can't, and I would like it noted for the record that most of us have moved out here to enjoy fresh air and fresh water and green grass. Consequently, there are not a lot of businesses, and many of us travel at least an hour to get to and from work, so it was difficult to get to this hearing, as well as if you had any other conflicts with your time. So I would like it duly noted that there were hardships for people. And as you can imagine, then we also have to get up early in the morning so that we get to our jobs tomorrow morning. So a lot of people have had to leave. I do appreciate you coming here, and I am so sorry that you couldn't come here for the Strawberry Festival or something else. Given that, I do want to check for, I actually had more questions and I never got around to being able to ask my questions, but I do want to clarify one point of order. It says, in accordance with 40 CFR 124.15, the permit will become effective immediately upon issuance if no public comments are received that requested a change in the draft permit. Have you received, based upon tonight's meeting, the request for change? I'd like a nod at this point in time, or a yes or a no.
Let's talk after we're done tonight.
Well, this is, no, I'm serious. Have you received enough change requests?
Yeah, I'm not going to speak to that at this time.
Okay.
No, the rules are, he can't respond.
Okay, so he's not supposed to respond.
That's cool.
Then that kind of changes what I speak to in my next time. So, I request that the permit be rejected. If it is not or cannot be rejected, I request that things be re-examined. I also request that changes be made to the permit so that I have that technical language in there. The proximity to the school, proximity to Enbridge line, the record retention, it says 3 years. I have to keep my taxes for 7 years. They should have to keep them at least for 10 years. Duty to provide info, it says to the director. I believe it should be to the community, not just to the director. Airborne or surface water should be monitored by the community, and we should have a fund set up to be able to monitor that, not by the EPA, but by the company. We stated that H2S will be in the lines, but we said that that's actually above the lines. I would love to see a map that shows where exactly the aquifer is, and where the well is, and where the oil is, and where the lines that will transport the H2S to the injection jet will be. And with that, I'm out of time.
I'll mention again that the comment period remains open for another week, so there is additional time to share comments in writing.
Hi, my name is Deanne Bednar, B-E-D-N-A-R, and I want to acknowledge that we're part of a profound process on the planet. And I'm guessing that you went into your jobs because you care about safety and the welfare of the land. And that we all came here because we care for the same things. So we have probably a common goal in mind. And I think that we're in the process of developing a feedback system that is really responsive to humans and to life on the planet. And that's kind of an awesome, beautiful, bumpy sort of thing, and I'm glad to be a part of the process tonight. I didn't know about this until like 6:15 when a neighbor called and someone else had called them and they couldn't come because they had a baby they had to stay home with, and so I'd like to speak to our commitment to feedback systems and communication, and I would I don't know exactly what I want to say about us finding out about things, but maybe you can take back a comment that there might be more overlapping systems that let people know about things. And for us, maybe we start some communication networks among each other, that we monitor the website or watch the newspaper or keep ourselves in touch with each other, so that we can continue this human dialogue that I think can be really profound when we deeply listen to each other and care. Enbridge came through the property that I live on, and in the process I decided I ought to have some monitoring done for my water ahead of time, and I was recommended to go through the DEQ, in which case I would have been harvesting the water myself and giving it to them. And someone said, no, have a third party monitoring. So we might want to find a way together, or maybe even with support of the DEQ, to have some third party monitoring. Thank you. I think I covered it all.
And then Gail Prey at the outset was undecided about whether comments were to be shared, but I'm going to provide that opportunity next. But first, John Blau. And then the third person in the queue is Greg Sproul. What time is it? Early. Okay. So is there anyone who initially indicated that they did not want to speak who wants to say something at this time? Okay, if you could step on up and state your name. I think we'll go for a few more minutes here. Are there others who want to share some thoughts at this time?
My name is James Baldiga. That's B-A-L-D-I-G-A. Thanks for coming all the way from Chicago. In 2 weeks, I will have lived in Leonard for 23 years. I want to say that, I know you guys have a job to do. It just seems very narrow that you only focus on the well. And we have these underground lines, I guess, I don't know, that deliver the H2S and take things away that we don't know where they are, and we're not looking at those. Seems like that should be part of the process. I also want to say that I had no access to any sort of municipal water. The only place I get my water is from my well. Probably most people here. And the last thing I want to say is next time you do a notice, I'm on the library board. I didn't know about this notice that you gave in April. I learned a couple weeks ago in the newspaper, which I think that's weird. Maybe next time send it to the barber shop.
Hi, my name is Gail Craig, P-R-E-Y, and I've lived in Leonard along with my husband for 23 years, and I've also taken care of many of the people that have lived here for hundreds of years. There are families that I've taken care of, old people, that have told us about how beautiful it was to live here. And it still is beautiful to live in this little tiny, quaint town, that we have clean water and our children can go outside and breathe fresh air. But I'm afraid that when we say Environmental Protection Agency, it doesn't seem like you're protecting the environment anymore. It's you're protecting the people that want to make money off the environment that we are trying to protect, and as people that live in this small town and that live everywhere else, people coming from Southfield. People in Shelby Township will be able to shut down the energy that was trying to put a pipeline there, and I would like to do the same thing in Leonard. Thank you.
Thank you. So is anybody who has not spoken who would like to? Okay, this gentleman here.
My name is John Johnson, John-S-O-N, and based on what I've seen here tonight, it seems like you guys are trying to push this through based on the other lady's question earlier, and it just seems like this is going to be a done deal based on the records that one of the gentlemen put forth, that no matter how much we stood up and fought, this is going to end up going through. I hate to see that happen, but it's kind of what it's looking like. Thank you.
Okay, I'll say going once, going twice. Okay, anyone else? Well, thank you very much for spending this time with us tonight, and thank you for your comments and earlier for your questions. The comment period will remain open until the 19th, so anyone who did not get the chance to share the full breadth of your comments during the time allotted tonight is invited to send comments in writing, either by email to Anna or by U.S. Postal Service or other traditional methods of delivery to Anna by the 19th.